Hello, everybody. The topic for today's lecture is the man in the Bible. We have covered the book of Genesis and the book of Exodus. Today, we will review a little bit about Noah, Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, and also we will get to know a few new figures. They are Samson, David, and the Apostle Paul. And let's see what kind of heroes they are. Do they share some similarities? And what attitudes does the public show towards those heroes? Let's review a little bit about Noah. Noah, do you still remember in Genesis, God said he is the righteous man in God's eyes, who walked with God. And God has chosen him to be the person who will build the ark to save the world. Right? Okay. But in Genesis 9:21, if you read carefully, you can read description like this. When he drank some of his wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside the tent. Well, Noah got drunk and lay naked inside the tent. And because of some disrespectful behavior of his sons, he also cursed them. In fact, we say Noah made a mistake first, and then later he cursed his sons. And then we have Abraham. We say Abraham is the father of faith because he shows a very strong determination when he is sacrificing Isaac. And when God called him to go to Canaan, this 75-year-old man had no doubts, has no arguments. God let him go, he just goes. So we say that we see the strong faith in Abraham. But have you ever noticed the one episode? In Genesis 12:10-20, if you read carefully, you find a story that Abraham went to Egypt by his own hunger, worried that his wife's beauty might endanger his life. So he told a lie, say, this is my sister. Later, a Pharaoh took Sarah to the palace. A lot of plague falls down, okay? So we have to say, when Abraham is telling lies, where is his faith? Where is his strong determination in God? Okay, he doubts. We say, to some extent, according to historical analysis, Sarah can be called half-sister to Abraham. But at least from this incident, we see what? Fear, doubts, anxiety, and worry in Abraham. And that is to say, he also has his weak points. He also has his weakness. And Jacob, yes, the cunning Jacob, we know that who God favors in his plan and who knows God is the most important. And he wrestled with the angel, the God, for blessing. You don't bless me, I won't let you go. Right? Okay? But we say he is a deceiver to some extent. Right? He deceived his brother and later deceived his father for blessing. And Joseph. Do you still remember Joseph? Who resisted Potiphar's wife? Say, I will not do that. And also, he forgives his brother. Finally, he was described as a compassionate savior full of mercy and love. Okay, but at the very beginning, do you still remember Joseph appeared as an informer, a teenager tattletale, and also immature braggart who tells secret of his brothers and always boasts about himself, right? Okay, he's so nasty. Okay. What about Moses? In the book of Exodus, we know that Moses is really a great leader who led Israelis out of Egypt with his power, strength, and wisdom, right? And also we say that he is not only a heroic liberator, but also a wise judge, a prophet, who has this kind of privilege of talking to God face to face. In fact, in the whole Bible, we don't see many figures like this who have the privilege of speaking with God face to face, personally. And this Moses, don't forget, he killed someone and then ran away, right? He becomes a wanderer. And do you still remember when God called him to go back to Egypt? What's his reaction? Why me? Why me? I don't want to go back. And then God persuaded him, tried to negotiate with him. And then he said, no, I'm not good at speaking. My tongue does not work so well. And I don't think I have the ability. And God even got angered and say, I will set Aaron with you. Go directly. So we say that Moses, at the very beginning, he was not that determined and faithful. And later, from the book of Genesis, we also know that he was not allowed by God to arrive at Canaan, the land of milk and honey, the promised land. Do you still remember the speech given by Martin Luther King? I've been to the top of the mountain. I've seen the piece of land, but I want to go there with you. In fact, that's the story of Moses. God said, you cannot go into the land of promise because you also made a mistake and you commit crime and sins. And today we will get to know a few new figures. And the first one is Samson. Samson, okay? Maybe if I translate it into Chinese, you might know him. 参孙, the powerful Samson. Samson is a figure from the book of Judges. The book of Judges is believed to be the book that describes the dark age of the Israelites. Because before that, they have Moses. And after that, they have King David. So you can see it's just like two pigs. And then in the era of Judges, it's the lower points of the history of Israelites. They don't have a great leader, they have just some judges. So it's called the book of Judges. And Samson is a judge. Okay. And let's look at the story of Samson. Samson was born to be a Nazirite. Nazirite is a special person who God will give this kind of strength. We say supernatural strength. And God arranged him and planned him to deliver his people from the enemies. In fact, Samson has two vulnerabilities. One is his hair. To be a Nazirite, he cannot have his hair cut since he was born. And once his hair was cut off, then he will lose his power. And second, he has a kind of desire for women. And this kind of, we say, attraction to untrustworthy women becomes his weak points and weakness. Okay, let's read the story between Samson and a woman whose name was called Delilah. Okay, let's read the story. Samson was chosen by God to deliver Israel from their enemy, the Philistines. Samson fell in love with Delilah. The Philistines said to her, "See if you can make him show you the secret of his great strength." So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength." Samson said, "If you tie me with new ropes, I will become as weak as any other man." So Delilah tied him up. Then she called, "Samson, the Philistines are here." But Samson snapped the ropes. Delilah then said to Samson, "You have been lying to me. Tell me, how can you be tied?" He replied, "If you waved my 7 plates into a loom, I will become weak." So while he was sleeping, Delilah wove his 7 plates into a loom. Again, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are here." But he woke up and escaped alone. Then she nagged him day after day until he was tired to death. So he told her everything. If my head were shaved, I would become weak. Having put Samson to sleep on her lap, she called a man to shave off his hair, and his strength left him. Then the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes and took him to prison. But the hair on his head began to grow again. Now the rulers of the Philistines got together. While they were in high spirits, they shouted, "Bring out Samson to entertain us." One day stood him among the pillars. Samson prayed to God, "Please strengthen me for once more." Then Samson reached toward the two pillars on which the temple stood. Bracing himself against them, he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple. So this is the story of Samson and Delilah. It's really a tragic story, right? We see a tragic figure. Let's look at the story in detail. Okay, Delilah tries to persuade him to give the secrets. Once, twice, according to the Bible, altogether for 7 times. If you read carefully, you will find the typical way when women, they are trying to persuade you to do something. You don't love me. If you love me, how dare you don't tell me your secret? If you love me, just prove it, right? Okay, so, and Samson, when his hair was cut off, and his power just left him. But finally, for the last time, he prayed to God, not for survival, but for the strength once more. And then used the final strength, the last drop of strength, and just ruined the temple and died with his enemies. This is really a tragic hero. We have our respect for Samson, but on the other hand, we do feel a pity, right? Okay, this kind of self-indulgence. The story of Samson and Delilah has provided inspirations for many artists. They would like to present it in different ways. For example, this one by the German painter Lucas Cranach. Okay, you can see this is Samson, who is a warrior, and this is Delilah, and the Philistines are coming. And this picture is by Rubens, another Renaissance painter. In this picture, you can see Samson had his hair cut off. And this is by Rembrandt. Okay, we can also see that this is Delilah depicted as a kind of a female spy, right? But in Andre Madigan's Samson and Delilah, in this piece of work, you might find something different. How do you feel? Compared with the previous one, Samson is smaller. Yes, who is of the average proportion of a man, who is not taller or bigger or stronger, just an average person. And Delilah, who looks so innocent and pure, and just like a neighborhood girl, right? It looks like, really, she does not look like a spy. Just look like a girlfriend who's having her boyfriend haircut. In this picture, we can see that the author, the painter, is trying to convey different messages. Okay. And this is a 1940s work in pop culture. And in this picture, you can see this is Delilah, okay? And then Samson. This is a kind of art decoration painting. You just hang it on the wall of your hall or the dining room or somewhere. Okay. 装饰画. Then, let's come to David. Do you still remember that we have ever mentioned David for one time. We met David first as a shepherd, but who loved God very much. Because, you know, David, when he's tending the sheep in the wilderness, every day he sings the songs to God and to praise Lord with his voices and with his words. So God doubted him. At that time, there was a king whose name was Saul, but Saul was not favored by God anymore. And then, secretly, God ordered Samuel to anoint David as the new king, the king in waiting. Anointed means you use oil to put it on the head of somebody, and then he will become king. David, not only in Christian history, but also in Jewish tradition, is regarded as the greatest king in history. Even though that King David didn't build up the temple of Jerusalem himself, but we have to say that he built up the foundation for Jerusalem. Jerusalem, 耶路撒冷所在 in Israel. So we say that David, King David, is really a magnificent figure in the Holy Bible. Then let's see what's happened to David, and let's read a story between David and a woman. One evening, David got up from his bed, and he walked about on the roof of the palace. He saw a woman bathing nearby, and she was beautiful, very beautiful. So he sent the messenger to fetch her and lay with her, and soon she was pregnant. Of course, the woman, Bathsheba, has a husband, and her husband is called Uriah, who is fighting in the battlefield with the enemies of the Israelites. So David then ordered to send Uriah back and said to him, "Go down to your house and wash your feet after your journey." That is to say, David is using tricks. He wants to what? Send Uriah back, and then he will lay with his wife, and then, in fact, David wants to what? Cover the sins that he had committed. But Uriah, who is really a righteous man, he did not enter the room. He just stayed by the gate, the palace gate, because he said, "How can I go home to eat and drink, to sleep with my wife, when Israelites are in the tents? They are staying in the open and fighting with their enemies." So, several days later, Uriah just went back without laying with his wife at all. And then, David has another trick. And he wrote a letter to the general and say, "Go to fight the Philistines and fight with the strongest enemy, and send Uriah there, and when he's fighting there, you just draw back." Wow. You can imagine. Uriah was killed. And then David just took Bathsheba back to the palace. Wow, we really can't imagine David did things like this. That's King David, who was loved by God, who loved God so much. He not only killed, but also killed with such kind of mischievous way. And in this picture, it shows David and Bathsheba. We know Sheba is a name for lady. Bathsheba means Sheba taking bath. So let's think about it. We have drunken Noah. We have deceiver Jacob. We have the informer Joseph. We have angry Moses. We have this David who killed the husband and occupied his wife. And also we have Samson, who's so powerful but with such self-indulgence. Okay? So in fact, the man in the Bible, from the very beginning to the last, even in the New Testament, we will find they are all heroes with flaws. No human being is perfect, and no one is righteous, and everyone is sinful. And to some extent, they will commit crimes, commit sin, make a mistake in different ways. And in fact, this kind of view on heroes are quite different from our Chinese cultures, right? Okay, let's see another one. The Apostle Paul, 使徒保罗. Okay, we say Jesus altogether has 12 disciples. Peter and Andrew, etc., etc. Paul was not among the 12 apostles, but he is the most important one as far as Christian theology is concerned. Why? Because he is the apostle who taught the gospel in the first century, and he is believed to be the builder of the early churches. And what's more, he spread the Christianity in the Asia Minor and Europe in the first half century. Most important of all, a lot of letters in the New Testament are believed to be written by Paul. Some key letters, such as the letters to the Romans, is translated as 罗马书, and 2 letters to the Christians. So if you go to churches, you usually can see the picture, the image of the Apostle Paul. And Paul is so important, we have to say more about him. In fact, his episodes today continues to be vital roots of the theology, worship, and the pastoral life in not only the Roman Catholic, Protestantism, and also Orthodox tradition. There's one thing especially important, that the Apostle Paul built up the principle that's called work of the faith. Let's read it. Augustine of Hippo developed Paul's idea that salvation is based on faith, not on works of the law. And later, Martin Luther used the word doctrine of sola fide to describe this kind of salvation based on faith, not on works. That's called 因信称义. So, in fact, we say Apostle Paul's interpretation of Jesus Christ, of his doctrine, set Judaism apart with Christianity. This is the picture by Rembrandt. It's called Apostle Paul. But can you imagine that? When Paul first appeared, he was not as a faithful follower of Jesus, but appeared as a persecutor who persecuted the Christians. Okay, in fact, Paul was born into a Jewish family, and presumably into a strict Pharisees. And then he was present at the stoning of Stephen. Okay, they killed Stephen, the disciple of Jesus, by stoning him, just kill him with stones. And also, he participated some other persecutions. Use the word from the Bible, it says, going from house to house, he dragged out the believers, both men and women, and threw them into jail. That's what Paul has been doing before he was converted to be a Christian. Okay, then let's have a look at the conversion. It's really very dramatic incidents. You know, one day, he undertook a mission to Damascus, 大马士革, where he intended to continue attacking Christians. Suddenly, a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, Saul, Saul. That's the name of Paul before he was converted. Why do you persecute me? Who are you, Lord? Saul said, I'm Jesus, whom you are persecuting. The voice replied, now get up and go into the city. You will be told what to do. The men with Paul stood there speechless, because they heard the sound, but they didn't see anyone. Then Jesus commissioned Paul to preach his message to the Gentiles, not just to the Jewish people, but to the Gentiles, to the person outside the Jewish tribes. This picture by Caravaggio in 1601 just presented the moment that Paul was converted by the light from God, and God talked to him in person. So Paul has ever confessed in the Bible, in the New Testament, I'm really a sinful man, and the most sinful man. No one can be more sinful than me. So let's draw a conclusion, okay? Let's think about all those heroes. Those heroes are not covered figures of perfect virtue. No one is, right? They all have their weakness, they all have their drawbacks, they all have their shortcomings, and they do things wrong this way or that. But they share something in common. They are faithful to God. They have wholehearted commitment to God's promise. Okay? In fact, what's the difference between King David and the King Saul? They are two kings, but God loved David, but disfavored Saul. The only difference is that David loved God, and whenever he committed sins and made mistake, he repented himself. He repented sincerely and apologized. That's the only difference. And in the Christian tradition, okay, they believed human beings all have shortcomings. They are either fear, doubt, jealousy, anger, cruelty, etc., etc. But God will use their weakness and turn them into strength, and then use human beings in the way that God wants. So, no man is perfect, but God is. Okay, that's the view on heroes in the Bible. We have been discussing all those heroes. We find they are heroes with flaws and weaknesses. With a hero with flaws have provided great inspirations for the writers and also the conductors of films. I would like to say that the stories of the hero in the Holy Bible can be divided into several types, and then they fall into several categories. Okay, let's have a look. And the first type, I call it the arduous journey. Yes, it's a difficult traveling journey. The book of Exodus, that Moses, and also the story like Moses in the literature works. Have you ever read a story written by Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness? No? Okay, I suggest you to read it. It's about a journey. Okay, and also the film The Life of Pi by Li An. Have you ever watched it? Of course it's a journey, right? This kind of journey film is very popular in Hollywood movies. Titanic is also a journey, right? And also the motive of growing up. Say, in fact, we see the growth of Moses from a self-doubting person who has no confidence in himself to a prophet, a very wise judge, and a political leader. And also, we see the change of Joseph and also Jacob, right? Okay, this kind of growing up. And this theme is presented in The Great Expectation, written by Charles Dickens. 伟大前程. Okay. And fall and punishment. Do you find this kind of stories are very popular in the Holy Bible? We have the story of Adam and Eve, right? Also, we have the story of the Tower of Babel. And also, we have the story of Cain, who was expelled by God, right? And the flood. They are all about sins and punishments. And the book written by John Milton, Paradise Lost, 失乐园, presented motives very similar to this fall and punishment. What about salvation? We have sin, we have punishment, but that was not the ending of the story. God will always save with mercy, right? Okay, so God saved Lot's family. God saved Cain. Even though he killed Abel, God gave him a mark. Say anyone who killed Cain will be revenged, will be punished 7 times, right? And we know Noah's family who were saved by God and survived the flood. And the family of Joseph, yes? The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne belongs to this type, salvation. Okay. You know, A represents both adultery and angel. Okay. And testing. We have read a lot of story in the Holy Bible which is about the testing. Do you think the Garden of Eden is a testing? You cannot eat from one tree. If you eat, and then they cannot resist the temptation, and they want to be as wise as God, and then they eat it. Do you think the sacrifice of Isaac is a testing? Do you think that God really wants to kill Isaac? Not, surely not. It's a kind of test, okay? So life is a test. You are taking exams every day, okay? And Joseph and Potiphar's wife, it's also a kind of test, okay? And Christopher has ever written a novel that's called Dr. Faustus, okay? So if you are interested, you can read the story to see how the story presented the theme of testing. And self-recognition. We can say that all the prophetic books in the Holy Bible in the Old Testament belongs to this kind of self-recognition. Do you still remember the story of Jonah? We have Jonah complex. We mentioned that term in the first unit, right? And also Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Not only in literary works, not only in the masterpieces of those novelists. In fact, we can see the heroes and heroines in the films also present great similarities to the figures in the Bible. And here, I would like to use the film, The Shawshank Redemption, to show you how the hero in the Bible was presented in the film. Have you ever seen this film, The Shawshank Redemption? Yes, good. Okay, we have a figure, that's whom? Andy, right? Andy is the hero. Let's see, okay, Andy and Joseph, they share so much in common. Let's read one by one. Do you still remember Joseph? Who was adopted by whom? By his father, right? His father gave him the coat of many colors to show his favoritism, right? And Andy, in the film, we see he's a genius in finance. And Joseph was sold to Egypt, to a group of merchants, to be slaves. And then Andy was cheated by his wife. And Joseph was framed into the prison by Potiphar's wife. And Andy was framed by the lawyer. Framed, they are both framed. And then, in the prison, Joseph raised his status by his capability of management. right? And also interpreting dreams. What about Andy? Andy is a genius in financing, right? He also has a great ability in calculating and financing, in evading tax. They all used their capability. They all used their genius and skills, right? Joseph brought benefits to his families, right? Okay, Joseph saved his family from starvation, and they all survived the famine. And what about Andy? By building up a library and by negotiation with the warden for beers, even they can listen to music and they can go to study, they can read books. He also brought benefits to his friends. Andy finally escaped from the Shawshank. So just by the few points, did you find similarities? Are you shocked by the similarities? Yes, okay. That is to say, in fact, if you read carefully about the story in the Holy Bible, you will find about one thing. Those heroes, those plots, have always been inspiring materials for the writers, for the composers, and for the filmmakers to give their imaginations and to present their figures, right? So the more you read, the better understanding you will have while you are watching movies or reading books. Okay. So now let's come to the conclusion of today's lecture. The relation between literature and the Bible is not a historical curiosity, but it's grounded in the fact the Bible itself is literature. It's composed of many diverse and disruptive examples of linguistic play and meaning, okay? And also provide literature and films with great inspiration and rich ingredients, okay? So if you want to have more fun while you are watching movies, you really need to go through the Holy Bible to get to know those heroes and the stories. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you so much. See you next trip.